One where competition, not love, conquers all.
That's when you could start to puppet master the girls.
As much as we clearly enjoy reality TV and all of the mess it brings, we have to be able to sometimes take a step back and think critically about what we are watching and also what's going on behind the scenes. Arguably, no franchise is as big as The Bachelor. With consistent seasons and spin-offs since 2002, it clearly has no plans to slow down anytime soon, but maybe it should. It felt very pertinent to make this video right now because, as I mentioned in the last video, I am a huge fan of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. It's trashy reality TV and I'm here for it. But as we all know, if you are a fan of that show, Taylor is the newest Bachelorette. And after watching this Vice documentary and everything they had to say about The Bachelor and The Bachelorette and all of the varying spinoffs, it honestly has me a little bit worried for her and her well-being. Like I mentioned, this is a Vice documentary and they have an amazing series, but this one is from the series that arguably I love the most, which is The Dark Side of the 2000s. Season 1, episode 7 is all about The Bachelor. Trigger warning, this video will be talking about varying forms of abuse, SA, we'll be talking about substance abuse, we'll be talking about racial discrimination. Basically, all the things that could go wrong with the show will be talked about in this video. As you can see, we're also in a little bit of a different place. For December, videos will be filmed in front of my Christmas tree because why not? I need to show it off in all its glory. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. The Bachelor first debuted in 2002, and Vice claims that it has all of the right elements to make it an international hit, and maybe that's the case because it has quickly become an international hit. It was created by Mike Fleiss, who before creating The Bachelor was most well known for World's Scariest Police Shootouts.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Of course, that is the person who you want to make a dating show. Someone who monetizes violence and harm. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm glad nobody thought twice about that and how that could go badly.
The shows that I make, people are rarely confused by what it's about.
Mike Fleiss is described as quite the character and insisted on doing things outside of the norm, and not necessarily in a good way. Him wanting to do things outside of the norm sounds good in theory, but as you will find out in practice, it was actually just harmful. A lot of what these documentaries do is include people who were there during the time. Like the first video I made in the series was years ago, and it was about John and Kate plus 8. And you had John, you had some of the kids in it, you had producers, everybody was in there. So this one very similarly. So the first person we are introduced to from the set is Marky Costello, who actually was The Bachelor's first casting director in season 1. She was there right at the very beginning, so you would hope that she's going to give us a lot of good information. She's also going to give us some critical thinking, some critical feedback, or at least you would hope, right?
I know something you don't.
Anyways, Marky describes Mark as scary, which isn't necessarily an ideal way to think of your boss, if you ask me.
Mike was sometimes scary, but, you know, brilliantly scary.
So the show that actually led up to Mike creating The Bachelor was a show he named Who Wants to Marry a Multi-Millionaire. It was a show where 50 women were battling to marry an unknown man named Rick Rockwell. The show ends with 2 complete strangers getting married. Now, back in the early 2000s when this show first aired, this was kind of taboo territory, but nowadays this concept is extremely common in reality TV. For example, Married at First Sight, in which a bunch of people get married to complete strangers who they know absolutely nothing about. I actually have a couple of videos on Married at First Sight Australia if you want to check it out. I will be continuing that series as well, okay? So lock in. However, this show of Mike's Who Wants to Marry a Multi-Millionaire sparked controversy before it even started, and understandably so. It sounds batshit crazy, especially considering the fact that Rick Rockwell, well, number 1, sounds like a fake name, but number 2, he was never present on the show up until it was time to actually get married. However, despite it being absolutely batshit crazy, this batshit crazy concept had over 20 million people view it. What can I say? People love good trashy reality TV. I can't say I'm any different. I also love it. The show goes off perfectly exactly as planned. However, shortly after exchanging vows on the show and sealing their new marriage with a kiss, the woman who won the competition wanted to get out of that relationship.
Soon after breathlessly saying "I do," the newly minted Mrs. Rockwell begins screaming, "I don't."
She says that she was immediately regretful of her decision for reasons she didn't exactly articulate, or at least the documentary did not exactly articulate, but rightfully so, her gut was telling her something was off, because not long after she ended things and separated from this man, Rockwell's ex-girlfriend came forward and let us know that she actively has a restraining order against him for domestic violence.
I'm about to have one of those moments.
In the media, all of the fingers are still being pointed at Mike Fleiss for not doing a proper background check, which is interesting to me because last I checked, Mike wasn't the only one responsible for things like that. The networks didn't want to take any responsibility, any accountability, but it's very likely in my mind that you would do a basic background check before putting someone on a dating show like this. And a lot of the times it seems like reality TV producers will do these checks and they do not care because they think that the controversy in this person's personal life is going to create better TV for viewers. I feel like this is very pervasive on almost every dating show you can think of. Just think about the season of Love is Blind where Tyler had 8 million hidden children, or Steven's clear emotional and psychological issues. But it is very interesting to see that over 20 years ago, networks and their executives set the precedent of disregarding contestants' mental well-being and trying to set folks up for genuine success for the sake of a quick buck. So the issues that we're seeing now with shows like Love is Blind, Married at First Sight, and all the iterations, it didn't start there. This has been a problem since really the inception of these reality TV dating shows. And I feel like they will sabotage folks' well-being for the sake of making money. And that's very evident here in this situation because after this show ended the way that it did and the man is an abuser, ABC said, you know what? I think we got something here. They obviously cared more about the huge ratings, and then they put more money and power into Mike Fleiss by allowing him to create The Bachelor.
And hires Fleiss to create a reimagined version of that show called The Bachelor.
Jason Carbone, who was the executive producer and director of The Bachelor in the 2000s, says that everybody who worked on the show very early on did believe in the possibility of two random people meeting and genuinely falling in love. Now, I personally have a hard time believing this because of Mike's previous work that we discussed on that other show, but let's move on. After Jason is hired by Mike, he then hires producer Lisa Levinson, who is described as nothing short of the devil. So you just have a trifecta of ugly working on this show, allegedly, apparently. Many then tell us how they learned from Mike and Lisa to make contestants cry on camera, mostly from Lisa.
Everyone had their own shtick. I learned mine from Lisa Levinson.
And we are then introduced to Mike Carroll, who is another former Bachelor producer. And he tells us that to be on The Bachelor, you have to cry. If you don't cry enough, then they're going to find a way to get rid of you. And then they're going to make you cry when you leave because you didn't cry enough on the show. And they will use anything they can use as ammunition to make you cry. They'll bring up dead relatives, traumatic events. They don't care about any of it.
Their dad left them when they were 8 years old. They got left at the altar.
Nothing is off limits, which sounds like good, wholesome, fun TV, if you ask me. What the f***? ABC gave Mike an extensive list for the first ever Bachelor. He had to be funny, smart, educated. He had to be the ultimate bachelor, the one everyone either wanted to be with or they wanted to be. The casting tapes they received were the exact opposite of what they were hosting for.
I have a bunny.
But what the hell were you expecting? Because most sane men do not apply to be on a show where they have a bunch of women fighting over them. In my opinion, that is not a normal, healthy, or sane thing to do.
One guy literally sent us a pic before pics were dick pics.
It took them months to get approval from ABC for the first ever Bachelor, and a big part of this was because they still blamed Mike for how the last show went. So all potentials had psych evaluations done, background checks conducted by former FBI agents, and medical exams.
We look for herpes-free bodies.
It's crazy that all of this was done, and all of this is still done for the most part on dating reality TV shows, and you still end up with horrible people on the show, but we'll get into that later. I feel like the thing that rings most true for me throughout watching this entire documentary, and I watched it twice at this point, is that you cannot bear good fruit from a rotted tree. So Mike, he is the tree, he is the founder, he created all of this, rotted, gutted, disgusting in my opinion, so you can't expect anything good to come from that. But, however, By the grace of God or the duty of the devil, depending on how you look at it, production eventually found Alex Mitchell, who was the first ever Bachelor. Everyone loved him, he hit all of their requirements, and he had degrees from both Harvard and Stanford. Even though he was like the ideal contestant, everybody loved him, he still was not good enough. They put him through extensive measures to beautify him, including isolating him, hiring a personal trainer, putting him on a strict diet, and sending him to extensive dentist visits. This in and of itself is crazy to me because they got his tape, everybody loved him, there was no questions about that, and they all agreed he should be the first Bachelor, and yet he still was not good enough.
But he might need to lose a couple pounds. He might need to whiten his teeth.
To me, this feels very poetic, but in a sinister kind of way. After making Alex look like a Backstreet Boy, they focused more on the women who would be vying for his attention. They cared more about attractiveness than anything else, which at the time just basically meant skinny and white, because remember, we're going by Mike's beauty standard.
Mike Fleiss loved beautiful blondes. They don't want fat, they don't want ugly, they don't want pimples.
However, the women were asked a lot of invasive questions, arguably a little bit more invasive than some of the bachelors themselves. But also these invasive questions are asked, in my perspective, my opinion, just to see the hit points that they could hit to manipulate your emotions and get a bigger reaction out of you. Not because they actually cared about these things, but they want to use these things later on as emotional manipulation. Mike also didn't want to have a very attractive host because he didn't want to take attention away from the Bachelor or from the contestants, and didn't want the contestants to, have that urge to go after the host rather than the Bachelor. So they quickly find Chris Harrison. If you have never seen the show, the premise is basically just a large group of women are after this one man who dates all of them. Every week, he gives the women he's interested in a rose, and whoever doesn't get a rose gets sent home. They go out on various outings, they will eventually meet each other's families, but in the end, only one woman will get the final rose and a proposal, but newsflash, most of them don't get proposals, which is so interesting. It's like those Love is Blind seasons when damn near nobody gets married, and it's like, okay, well, this was the whole point.
So I am confusion.
On the very first night where introductions are made for this first season, we find out that producers put the women in limos and served them copious amounts of alcohol before they even got to set, where there is also more liquor everywhere. This is another concerning theme, in my opinion, that continues to pop up on reality TV dating shows or marriage shows. These people will always have access to alcohol, they will almost always be drinking, but there will be minimal access to food, and it would appear as if they are barely getting any sleep. If you really think about it, this was the exact reason that multiple lawsuits have been filed against Love is Blind and their producers. I feel like that's why in more recent seasons of Love is Blind, they have made a conscious effort to show everyone relaxing, show people sleeping, having a lot more downtime, and they put food in scenes even if nobody is eating it. But back to The Bachelor. Keep in mind, they're in these limos, they're driving them around for hours, there are no bathrooms in limos, of course. They get these young women drunk, they do not have a bathroom accessible, so these women are continually getting in and out of the limo to piss on the side of the road.
All the beautiful girls, they have to get out of the car and pee on the side of the road in their gown.
They are already grooming these women to be comfortable with embarrassment and degradation, and these women don't even know it. Now, not only were contestants constantly drinking, but production was constantly drinking as well, because it was expected that if Lisa or Mike, want you to drink, you drink. If they see you without a drink, you're gonna get in trouble.
If you came into the control room as a producer, and Mike Fleiss would be like, "Want a beer? Have a beer. Loosen up."
Which, what the is that? Clearly, in my opinion, Mike was not a good boss, which in my mind also would translate to the way that that Bachelor operates, right? So Mike was constantly in complete control. He would not have it any other way. And he made it clear in that very first season who he wanted to win. Of course, shockingly, his type were blondes, right? So his two favorites were thin blonde women. However, these women were not at all Alex's favorites. And yet they were some of the first to get roses in that premiere episode, which is interesting, but not really. We then find out from an ex-producer that more often than not, Alex had very minimal say about who would stay, and ABC, Mike, and Lisa would get all of the say. There would always be constant arguments that first season, and I would imagine, and other seasons that followed, about who would stay and who would get sent home. There was also an effort, and I say effort because it wasn't a real effort, to appear inclusive by getting a token Black woman on the season and allowing her to stay through the first episode.
But there's one thing everyone agrees on. They need to appear inclusive.
Lanice was the only Black woman out of 25. The rest of them were white girls.
Damn.
There was not a mandate for diversity on the show at the time. I don't know if there is currently. But this goes in line with everything that Mike wanted. Also not shocking, but disgusting that the appearance of inclusivity was more important than genuine inclusivity, but I would expect nothing less from Mike Fleiss. Shockingly, when the show first aired, it was not received well by critics. Most people hated it. And New York Post critic Linda Stassi called it, and I quote, degrading, debasing, desperate, depressing, dull, and dopey. Damn, girl, that's a hell of a lot of D's. But I can't say I disagree with her because I have yet to watch a full season of The Bachelor or any of its spin-offs, let alone a single episode. For this reason, I think that this show is degrading. Sorry, I do. And degrading in a way that I'm not necessarily comfortable consuming. And Jason Carbone, former producer, says it best why I don't really want to watch it when he says that fundamentally, The Bachelor is mean.
The Bachelor is fundamentally kind of mean.
That is why it initially was not well received, but now, in my opinion, it's one of the main reasons people seem to love it the most. 9.9 million people watched the debut episode of The Bachelor. Everyone on the production side of things knew that the show was going to be a hit on the first season, but they did not expect how successful it would be. Vice believes that a big part of the show's success was because it hits all of the dating show success points. There is a shopping spree of sorts. Production called it the pretty woman date. There is cliche affection, kissing in a gondola under a bridge, like fairy tale type of stuff. But most importantly, there was jealousy, envy, and drama during group dates and also between the women. During the finale, Alex ends up picking between Mike's two production favorites.
Alex, perhaps unsurprisingly, ends up choosing between Mike Fleiss's original favorites.
Which to me raises the question of if he even had the opportunity to pick at all, if he was allowed to have any sort of choice. As in the beginning of the season, he truly had no genuine interest in either of these two girls until he was pressured behind the scenes from Mike to be interested in them. He ends up picking Amanda, which shocked production, but particularly Marky. I really don't like this woman. I really don't, because I would think that all these years later, she would have done some real reflection. She would have really thought about what she was doing and why it was harmful. But she talks about everything in such a disgusting, crass way. But also, like, she's proud of it. And I don't understand that. So she is shocked that Alex ends up picking Amanda for this very crass and dehumanizing reason.
But it goes to show those big boobs won over the small boobs.
Oh, P.U.
However, Marky was shocked by the fact that he picked Amanda, but everyone on production was shocked that he actually didn't even propose to her. So despite not sharing a proposal like Mike wanted in the final season, it was insanely successful as the finale was viewed by approximately 18.2 million viewers. That's a lot of people. Immediately following the airing of the finale, Alex and Amanda were everywhere. They were being shoved down everyone's throats on every single red carpet you could think of. But not long after, they break up. And why do they break up, you ask? Well, because Alex is still in touch with the runner-up that he did not pick, and he still has feelings for her.
But they break up when Amanda discovers Alex is still in touch with Trista.
Raise your hand if you're shocked. No? No hands are raised? I'm not shocked. I think the concept, I feel like the Cynthia Erivo meme, the concept of dating 25 women, developing feelings for all or most of these women, and then when it comes down to the finale, picking one of the women, it only makes sense that you are still going to have feelings for the other women that you were developing feelings for this whole time.
Be fucking for real.
Like, I'm not saying it was right that he was cheating and doing this behind her back. However, it's not shocking just based off of the premise of the show. Despite season 1 ending so disappointingly, the machine doesn't stop for a second and immediately begins casting for season 2. Casting for the women, they followed a very specific archetype, okay? Women would fit into one of these categories or more than one, but if they didn't fit into any of them, then they were not going to be on the show. It was a bimbo, or someone who they thought would give it out real quick, a ditzy girl for the audience and other participants to make fun of, a girl who is physically attractive for the Bachelor and the audience to lust over. We are then introduced to Kelly Jo Higgins, who was on season 4 of The Bachelor, and she admits that she was only on the show for the last reason, for her body.
I had great boobs and a great butt back then, so why don't you expose it?
On her season, she was a production favorite, partly because, I don't know, she seemed to exactly be Mike Fleiss' type. But production urged her to do everything she could to get the first kiss from Bachelor Bob. She did, in fact, end up getting that first kiss, and I don't want to... Okay, how do I say this? To me, it very much gives that she was a bit of a producer plant. Like, they realized they could manipulate her, and she would just do everything that they say and did. So she continued to act in the way that production wanted her to act, but this subjected her to a lot of outside criticism. She became subject to a lot of hate, to a lot of name-calling and public degradation, to which the show did nothing to shield her from, but were the sole reason that she was getting that type of negative attention. We are then introduced to Trish Schneider, who was on season 5 of The Bachelor. She was the show's first ever villain. And this also allowed her to become, unfortunately, a target of a lot of hate, public degradation, name-calling, also to which the show did nothing to protect her from. In fact, the way that they edited things and spliced it all together only added fuel to the fire, made her an even bigger target. Now, it's very easy to say like, oh, you know what you're signing up for.
If you don't want to be on television, then don't be on television.
Okay, I still think that production should have some sort of responsibility, some sort of obligation to protect their contestants, to defend the people who are making them millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's just, in my mind, that's how things should work.
But also, can we just be real for a second? This was the very early stages of reality TV. Most people absolutely did not know what they were getting themselves into. And even if they did, I feel like that's a weird way to shift responsibility off of the network and the people who were really making the final calls.
Production admits that Trish was great TV, and she allowed them to kind of puppet master not only her, but other contestants with ease to say whatever they wanted.
And by easy to produce, I mean, that's when you could start to puppet master the girls into saying what you wanted.
So this was when they really started to hone in on that skill. And if the girls didn't do and say what they wanted, then they would just make them drink more, which would allow them to become, how do you say, more susceptible to their ideas.
I did have, a couple of drinks. It's like without food, and you drink these drinks, it gets to you.
Cut the cameras.
Disgusting. Now, a former producer on the show also admits to something that we talked about briefly earlier, but now we're going to get into it a little bit more in depth. He admits that it was a part of production's job as well to drink, and basically drink around the clock.
As a producer, it was your job to drink.
Mike Fleiss required everybody to always have a drink in their hand. Otherwise, he said it gave the impression that the people behind the scenes were not having as much fun as the people in front of the camera. Well, sir, they shouldn't be. That's not their job, right? Like, let's really think about it. Let's really get into how f***ed up this is. Because now everybody on set, production, contestants, Bachelor, everybody, they are in a much more vulnerable state because they basically have to be intoxicated whenever Mike says so, which is all the time.
So there'd be times if you didn't have a drink on hand, Mike Fleiss would get mad at you. Doing that all day.
Or else they would risk losing their job if they were production, or if they were on the show, they would risk being sent home. I'd also imagine this would make it a lot more difficult for production to intervene in situations that are very inappropriate, that are unsafe, because they are also under the influence, so they're not thinking and operating how they normally would if they were sober. They're not of sound mind, all because the head honcho, the head bitch in charge, wants everybody to be intoxicated.
You nasty.
That's weird. That's weird. And also, this is why I really don't like at the beginning that the production company tried to push blame and responsibility solely onto Mike. Because yeah, Mike is at fault, but shouldn't there be no further oversight to make sure that this doesn't happen? Should there be no one monitoring and watching to ensure that this isn't happening? Producer Michael says that it's almost like they were forced to be alcoholics.
I drank so much on that show, eventually I gave it up because I couldn't live life normally anymore.
I can't. That's so incredibly harmful, all for the sake of a TV show? You're out of your mind. Kelly Jo and a bunch of other contestants, but particularly Kelly Jo, say that it is extremely easy to fall in love on The Bachelor because they are constantly manufacturing these situations that are solely for you to do just that. Something behind the scenes production would call the Bachelor bubble. Hence why a lot of the relationships created on this show struggle to translate into the real world in their day-to-day lives. Because when you're going on expensive dates all the time, you're just having all these amazing situations, money is not an obstacle because you're on a TV show. How do you go from that life to just your everyday life? That doesn't even make sense. Because now the idea of the relationship that you envisioned with this person is not a reality. It was a lie spoon-fed to you by a network who just wants to make money off of you.
It put them in the headspace of fairy tale land, to where they're like, wow, my life with this person's gonna be like this every day.
But the creation of this bubble is very intentional. It ultimately starts before any contestants even arrive on the scene, by removing cell phones and TVs from their hotel rooms. Then, when the women check into the hotel rooms, they are not even given room keys.
You're not allowed to leave the room. They don't want you commingling. They don't want you really to see anybody.
They are not allowed to leave their rooms. Not officially, because officially you could get out and you could leave. But how are you going to get back in if they didn't give you a room key?
Quickly.
Their luggage is searched, and anything that would allow them to have any contact with the outside world is taken from them. But in reality, producers had leeway to do whatever they wanted. So they would not only take cell phones and laptops, anything like that, they would also take magazines, books, pens and papers, CDs, basically anything that would keep you sane, right? And production says that they do this so the ladies are able to stay fully focused on the mission at hand, on the goal, so they can stay focused on the Bachelor. But I personally think they do this to keep the ladies out of touch with reality and allow them to lose any real sense of self in order for them to be perfect targets for manipulation behind the scenes, in my opinion. And it allows the women to only talk about one thing, The Bachelor.
It's just nonstop. It was like a bobblehead of, this is how I feel about Bob.
Which ultimately makes for entertaining TV, but it could drive any person insane. Kelly Jo says that there was never a time that a camera was not in your face. There were cameras on them 24/7, and not like the cameras on the walls that they do on shows like Love Island, but like an actual cameraman following you around in your face. She says that every single date, every single interview, every single thing that was done in that house was done with the intention of creating strong emotions to capture on camera, whether positive or negative, but as you can guess, more times than not, they were negative emotions. Michael says that their goal of doing all of this before the women even entered the show was to create some sort of idol worship dynamic.
The Bachelor bubble immediately makes, psychologically these women, idol worship.
Where they put the Bachelor on a pedestal much higher than they put themselves, which means that they were desperate and they were willing to do any and everything to get after that man. Even if they didn't truly want that man or like that man. They feel like they have to win a prize, which is not even true love, but to win this man and this dream life that they're being sold, both of which don't really exist. The Bachelor bubble works strongly on Kelly Jo, as I'd imagine it would on any young, impressionable woman. And even with the Golden Bachelor and things like that, it's clear that this works on women who are not as young and impressionable. Kelly believed without a doubt that Bachelor Bob was going to pick her. He was going to choose her because he was clearly falling in love with her as she was falling in love with him. But in the end, Bob does not pick Kelly Jo. He picks Stella, and he gives her a promise ring.
If someone wears a ring on their right hand, it can mean a sense of promise.
Be fucking for real.
Not even a proposal, not even an engagement, a promise ring. I just know this had Mike Fleiss hot. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with a promise ring. Get a promise ring, give a promise ring, not a big deal. However, it, in my mind, would be a huge fail if the whole purpose of the show is to get a proposal, and not only do you not get a proposal, but he still gives the ring, but it is not an engagement ring, it's a promise ring. At the time, this devastates Kelly Jo, but she says now in this interview that she would have scoffed at the idea of a promise ring. And I'm sure it's very easy for her to say that now, but at the time, while she was still in the Bachelor bubble of manipulation, I have a very hard time believing that she wouldn't have accepted this ring with gratitude and fervor. And I think she would have accepted if he had given her nothing and said, I just want to keep doing us outside of the house. I think she would have accepted that.
My heart is broken. A promise ring, I would have been like, buddy, come on.
Mike Fleiss loses his mind on Bachelor Jesse when he refuses to give fan favorite and series villain Trish a rose. Mike told Jason they had to do whatever they could to keep Trish on the show after she had been eliminated.
Mike said to me, we got to figure out a way to keep her on the show. She's the best thing we've got this season.
So after she should have already been on a flight home, after they should have got all the crying interviews, they said, no, we're keeping her. And Mike told Jason, I want you to figure out a way to do it. Jason basically says that he would do anything he was told, and his job was made a lot easier to keep Trish because Trish wanted to stay. She wasn't ready to go home, as I don't think most of the women, at least early on in the series, were ready to go home. So production went to Trish and they told her that she could return to the show, but only if she invited Jesse to spend the night with her privately in a hotel room.
We're giving you this. You have to give us something in return.
To me, I believe that the invitation wasn't just to spend the night. In my opinion, it very much gives throw some cat his way, sleep with him, or else go home for good. Give us something juicy, something a little bit more explicit to add to the TV show. Otherwise, you could pack your bags, you could leave right now. Production ultimately got the television moment they were looking for when the episode after Trisha's elimination, she interrupts one of Jesse's solo dates with another contestant. She doesn't really listen to anything he has to say. She gives him a room key card and tells him that their time together does not have to end. Trish said that had it been up to her, she would not have given him the room key card.
I wouldn't have given him a room key. The show, the producers were like, we give you this, you give us this.
But of course, like almost everything else that goes on with this show, it was up to production. And I'm just going to say, this to me, in my opinion, allegedly, it teeters on the line of exploitation and almost kind of feels like they are, how would you say, her out a little bit. That's what it feels like. However, Mike was happy with the ultimate outcome of this whole dynamic, and Jason got job security because of this. Michael then admits that anybody who would stir up copious amounts of drama or who is really good at making the women cry quite hard, they would get to stay on the show.
Making a contestant cry or stirring up drama, you're staying on the TV show. So that's what you did.
Their job security was tied to being intoxicated and to emotionally harming women who are in already vulnerable positions, which is great. It's so ethical when you think about it like that. In my mind, this essentially encouraged everyone to harm these women emotionally and often damage their public image for the sake of their jobs. Now, also keep in mind, like I said, they are still encouraged to drink heavily. So this could mean that they are taking things too far and doing things that might not have even crossed their mind had they been sober. Michael admits that it was awful to exploit these women's insecurities and often the hardest times of their lives.
What have I done wrong? What did I do to deserve this?
But if producers didn't do so, then they were made to feel like ultimate failures. So it sounds like, in my opinion, Mike is mistreating and abusing his workers. So then it's a trickle-down effect. Everybody is mistreating and abusing everybody because Mike does it. So now everybody's getting mistreated in a way that they shouldn't be, especially when you consider this is a workplace. I know it's reality TV, but it is still a workplace. ABC wants to blame everything on Mike. Where were y'all at? Where are your checks and balances? This is not to absolve any of the producers from their participation in the mistreatment of these women and of the Bachelor contestants themselves. However, it's just important to recognize that this is a problem that started with the network and Mike Fleiss, and had things been different higher up, then it is possible that the entire trajectory of this show, first couple seasons especially, were completely different. That is very likely a possibility in my opinion. We are then introduced to former contestant Kim Sullivan. She says that during her exit interview, producers brought up her father having an affair and her best friend dying due to suicide, then saying that this show could be added to her life's list of disappointments.
So this is just one more thing that you can add to your list of disappointments. This face says it all. It
was clearly said to elicit a very strong emotional response from her, and it worked. But at what cost? People are awful. Now, former contestant Trish says that being on The Bachelor ruined her career, basically. It left her struggling financially because, and get this, she was not paid to be on The Bachelor.
Bombastic side eye.
Don't piss me off. Like, I'm already annoyed, but this is really gonna piss me off. Because without the contestants, without these women, they wouldn't have a show. Former contestant Kelly Jo says that it is not fair that the contestants do not get paid despite having to take 6 weeks off of work and supply their own wardrobes. I agree with you, girl. That's not fair at all. To not pay them even just a simple stipend is crazy. But at this point, in this time period, I would expect nothing less from ABC and the show's creators. We then hear from a former Bachelor contestant himself, Lorenzo Borghese, who was the Bachelor for season 9, and he recalls that at that point, the women on his season were still not getting paid. He says one woman on the show even told him that she sold her car to be able to afford dresses to go on the show.
One actually sold her car to buy dresses to come on the show, which I felt awful about.
I feel like, just a little pause, I think this goes back to something that we talked about in a podcast episode where we talked about that article that asked the question, is having a boyfriend embarrassing? And I said this in the video, but I'll say it again. The way that women are socialized often allows us to feel like love is a top priority to where we aren't focused on anything else. And that is not the way that it should be, but this is a really good example of that, because why would you sell your car for the prospect of maybe getting a promise ring, maybe getting to date a man, maybe getting engaged at the end of it? But at this point, nobody from the show had gotten married. So like, the idea of love is so strong that you're willing to give up the things that should be the most important to you. And that is very sad to see. And also production, they know this about women, so they're taking advantage of that, even though they should be paying them. They should be offering them some sort of wardrobe budget. They should be keeping them safe. You know what I mean? Like, it's really the bare minimum. But Lorenzo says that he was voted the worst Bachelor of all time, and he is more than okay with that.
A couple seasons after mine, they came out with a poll, and I was voted the worst Bachelor ever, and I'm okay with it.
He says that just basically means he's really bad at lying to women and he's not good at dating 25 of them at once. He made things extremely difficult for production behind the scenes because he refused to do whatever they said. And also, his season was filmed in Rome, so they kind of had to go along with whatever he wanted because it was much too expensive of an undertaking to walk away with nothing from it. Lorenzo admits he did not like the show. He did not enjoy watching the show. He did not really want to be on it, but after significant manipulation and, ego boosting from production, he agreed to do it. He says that being on the show was one of the most embarrassing things he has ever done. He tried so many times to get out of it, but he was in over his head, and they make you sign a very extensive contract, making it nearly impossible to get out of this situation. This contract also states that the show and the network can violate your right to privacy, can cause you emotional distress, and portray you in a false light amongst a multitude of other things. The network owned his ass, essentially. Lorenzo was from a royal family in Italy, and they really played up on that, hence why they moved everybody to Rome just to film this season. He believes that ABC disliked him so much that they pulled his season from the air for a long time, making it very difficult to access. I'm sure it's easy to find now. He said that they tried to scrub him from the show's legacy for so long, if you could even call it a legacy. That's just the best word I know how to use right now. Lorenzo received a lot of hateful comments after his season finale aired, but unsurprisingly, most of these hateful comments were not really directed at him. They were directed at degrading the women.
I'd get physical letters that say, how could I pick a used woman over the virgin?
Michael admits that they would often take interviews and splice them up to hell, making contestants say essentially whatever they wanted because they own the rights to everything, regardless of how well it's put together before it airs.
You just find a way to make what you want for the edit happen by chopping up all the things they've said because we own every word they say.
Trish says that this part of things does not really sit well with her. And I believe it's also what allows a lot of these women to receive a lot of hate unnecessarily and be the targets of a lot of vitriol just because of the way that The Bachelor decided to chop it all up. Jason Carbone, this guy, claims that everybody knows what they're signing up for and basically contestants have to suck it up. I said I didn't like Marky and I also do not like Jason. The only one of the producers who has been interviewed so far that I kind of respect a little bit, but not really, because he still did all these things, is Michael, because he's being 100% honest and he's owning up to everything awful that he did or his fellow producers did. Whereas Jason and Marky still seem to be in the mindset like the contestants and the Bachelor were to blame, and they hold no responsibility or accountability, and they really do not seem to have a shift in mindset ever since 2002, and that's hard to see.
We're making entertainment. Everybody knows what they've signed up for.
Like, legally, yes, they do just have to suck it up, and unfortunately they are adults who signed that contract, but morally and ethically, you guys are not doing the right things here. So to absolve yourself of responsibility by being like, well, they signed up for it, so that means that you have the right to mistreat them?
We listen and we judge.
Oh, okay. The Bachelor and ABC try to hide many other things besides Lorenzo because they have been hit with a series of lawsuits over the years, like a lot of them. Instead of adjusting the way that they were doing things and trying to kind of curb the attacks against the contestants on their show, they did nothing until 2020. The show first aired in 2002.
Be fucking for real.
The Bachelor series claims that they addressed years of online abuse through the release of said special. They had Bachelor contestants sit down and read aloud some of the things that were said to them and about them before giving them an opportunity to speak on it themselves, which, I don't know, this just kind of feels like you're re-traumatizing them for views and being like, this is what we're doing to make amends.
How many of you have faced true hate? Not criticism, true hate.
How about you just protect them? Like, what? Let me re-traumatize you as a way to defend you and protect you and tell people, no, this is not right.
Is you stupid? Is you dumb? Pick a side.
Vice says that it is kind of too little too late for this special for a variety of contestants, but specifically season 1 contestant Lanice, who appeared on the show almost 20 years before this special had aired. Lanice says that she was hit with extreme racist bullying and was hospitalized for severe depression and anxiety because of everything that ensued after her time on The Bachelor. She is considered to be one of the lucky ones as she got away alive, which is insane to think about. Jason says that a big part of the reason why people love The Bachelor is because it's a love story, and at its core, everyone wants to fall in love.
It's a love story. Everybody wants to fall in love.
But this is vastly different from what former contestants have to say, including Trish, who says that realistically people want drama, and Lorenzo, who says that people love a train wreck.
You know, people want drama.
People love watching the train wreck.
So when you have the contestants' experience so far off from what production is saying and doing, you just know things are not going right there. But it goes on. It just keeps going on. The show is never ending. Mike Fleiss is arguably at his happiest after Sean Lowe proposes to Catherine, and it is also the first time a Bachelor had actually married the person that was chosen at the final rose ceremony. It took 17 seasons.
Bumbleclad!
But let us not forget that Sean and Catherine's relationship struggled a lot to transition to the real world. The first time I'd ever heard of these people was on Celebrity Marriage Boot Camp, where celebrity couples who are on the brink of separation or divorce go in order to save their relationship or decide to call it quits after weeks of so-called therapy. It's basically like an extreme dramatization of a therapy type of intensive camp, but that's the first time I ever heard of these people. So I feel like if you're saying, yeah, the show is all about love and people root for love and we create love, it's really not a good look that the first couple who ever gets married on your show after 17 seasons immediately goes to another show and admits that their marriage is failing. But all right, good stuff, I guess. Marky then gives kudos to Mike Fleiss.
Wow, kudos to you, Mike Fleiss. Kudos to you.
And I'm just going to say it, this woman is extremely dislikable. I can't stand her, and I can't stand Jason either. The only one who seems to be level-headed and honest about what's going on in all of this in terms of former producers is Michael. Marky says that finally getting the marriage, finally hitting that goal, allowed the Bachelor franchise to capitalize off of more raunchy, more vulgar series. And this is kind of when all of the spin-offs took off. Just based off of what is shown in the documentary, it seems like a lot of these spin-offs would just go out of their way to cause more harm to the women and embarrass them in ways that the flagship would not allow, because it kind of goes against the core value that they claim to be of the show, which is true love. Like this one scene on Bachelor Pad, when the men threw paint-filled balloons at the women they deemed to be the least attractive, and basically everyone threw them at the same girl, who happened to just be a larger girl than everybody else, but she's still very small. You don't see production stepping in and intervening and comforting her. You see the other girls comforting her, and the cameraman's right up in her face while she's crying.
Erica taking a beating down here.
You are incredible, you are amazing, you are beautiful, and you know that.
Again, seems like the antithesis of what they claim the series to be about, but moving on. On Bachelor in Paradise, 2 producers would launch legal complaints about how the show allowed a woman to get too intoxicated to give sexual consent, yet did nothing to intervene when said sexual acts happened.
Demario Jackson, accused of sexually assaulting Corinne Olympios.
Now, the person who allegedly committed the sexual assault was cleared of any misconduct. I'm not going to have much to say about that, except for if you are shoving alcohol down these women's throats, you are putting them in vulnerable positions, so you then have an obligation and a responsibility to protect them, not allow them to become assaulted, harassed, and mistreated for your financial gain. Do I know the inner workings of what really happened? No, but from the very beginning of this video, we have talked about how Mike Fleiss has created an unsafe working environment and encouraged everybody to be intoxicated at all times, which would make it impossible for anybody to give full, truthful, genuine consent. You cannot consent if you are under the influence. And I send my love and my strength to anybody who worked on these shows, anybody who was on these shows and was victimized as a result of it. Nobody deserves that. And it's a shame that the network did not take more responsibility for that. But because of this situation going public, Bachelor in Paradise allegedly implemented new rules, and one of which was a 2 drink per hour max. Be so for real. Be for real right now. That is still a lot of drinks. Like, I don't drink, I'm sober, but I'm not very tall. I'm 5'1". So 2 drinks, that would get me messed up. And you're telling me I have 2 drinks every hour? It's on like Donkey Kong. Everybody can still get up, especially if they're doing hard liquor. Like, anyways. But like I said, we also know how production created a culture of intoxication. So I personally would be shocked to hear that this policy was actually followed through with. I think they just had to say it so people would get off their backs about how they're essentially creating unsafe environments for people who are on the show. Be like, oh, well, this is what we're doing. Move on to the next thing. A former segment producer on The Bachelorette stated that 5 other producers sexually harassed her on set.
I was being asked such things as how I shaved myself.
Everything she alleged sounds pretty on par with the work environment that Mike Fleiss created, encouraged, and essentially mandated. Despite the show very clearly being morally bankrupt, in Vice's opinion and my opinion, everyone seems to be raking in the dough because of it. Mike Fleiss, I don't know if he still is, but he was dirty, filthy rich because of The Bachelor and all its varying spin-offs. Marky is then her annoying self and says this.
My favorite part about casting The Bachelor, it bought me my house in the Palisades.
I can't stand this woman. However, former cast members unfortunately paid the price for their participation on the show and for the way that production exploited their insecurities and made them the targets of vitriol to make a quick buck, including 3 contestants, 2 of which who died by suicide, Gina Allemond and Julian Hugg, and Lex McAllister, who passed away due to a drug overdose. Those around them blamed the show for their deaths. The bullying they endured essentially pushed them over the edge, and keep in mind, production did nothing to shield, protect, or defend them from this. They would actually do things, in my opinion, that encouraged these types of attacks that can really destroy a person. Trish says that if you are not mentally strong, then of course all of this is going to weigh on you, and I would counter that and say that even if you are mentally strong, this is still going to weigh on you, especially because the Bachelor fans, Bachelor Nation, they call themselves, seem to be like very like in it. They're very passionate about this, about their hate. Many former contestants are also publicly speaking out about their experiences, as they should. Caitlin Bristow says that Mike Fleiss is a, quote, piece of who hates women. Based on everything shared in this video so far, I cannot say I disagree with this take. She also made this statement publicly a number of times before footage was leaked of Mike allegedly assaulting his wife after she refused to get an abortion. Am I shocked that an abusive man on set was allegedly abusive at home to his wife? No. Am I shocked that a man who made his fortune off of mistreating and exploiting the vulnerabilities of women allegedly was mistreating his wife at home? Also, no. Despite the video being leaked, Mike denied all participation of this. He said it never happened. That's not what happened. And in their separation agreement, he paid his wife at the time $10 million. She then drops the charges, and not long after they reconcile. And this felt to me, in my opinion, like a little bit of image rehab and a little bit of a payoff, in my opinion, allegedly. Like if I give you $10 million, then you get back with me, you drop everything, and you don't speak about this ever again. Because you have to remember, Mike does not want to lose his spot as the Bachelor HBIC.
Clock it.
Like I said, Bachelor Nation seems to be stronger than ever. It has a very intense cult-like following. Markey says that the show exists as a form of escapism, despite decades of scandal, lawsuits, and even petitions for the show to come to an end. I think that all reality TV is some sort of escapism, but I also think that now, 2025, almost 2026, it is possible to create reality TV in a way that doesn't directly negatively harm as many people and exploit them in the varying ways that we have discussed throughout the beginning of this video. After what feels like 150 million years, on the night of the season 27 finale, Mike Fleiss stepped away from the Bachelor series.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Mike made it seem like, oh, I'm just stepping down, like I've been doing this for a long time, it's whatever, I'm ready to move on. But it became clear that Mike didn't choose that. There was an internal investigation launched based on statements made by producers against Mike that were based on allegations of an unsafe work environment, bullying, racial discrimination, harassment, amongst other things. Instead of trying to fight these claims and going against the very network that made him filthy rich, Mike decided to step down. But I would argue, in my opinion, this was a decision made under duress. I don't think he had much of a choice. Because if it came down to the Bachelor franchise still standing and tearing Mike down, babe, they're gonna pick the Bachelor franchise. That makes them hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't care about no Mike Fleiss anymore. He already gave them the recipe. They don't need him. However, in my opinion, him stepping away after laying the groundwork for 27 seasons and countless other spin-offs doesn't and will not automatically make it a safer or better work environment. Like I said at the beginning of the video, you cannot produce good fruit when the tree is rotten. You have to cut that down and rip it out from the roots and plant a whole new tree. Obviously, they're not going to do that, but in my mind, the franchise will always be extremely flawed and harmful because of everything they allowed Mike and other producers to get away with and essentially encouraged because it made for good TV. It would also appear as if the franchise has not fundamentally changed.
What we do to the contestants is disturbing to you as a producer, just wrecking them.
Now, Jason says that it is hard for him to say whether he was or wasn't conflicted about working on the show, but he knows for sure without a doubt that he would never let his daughter be on the show.
Would I want my daughter to be on the show? Hell no.
What an odd thing to say.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, so it's fine to mistreat, harass, embarrass women as long as they aren't related to you. Got it. Got it. Cool. It felt very timely to make this video because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we know Taylor is on The Bachelorette. We also know, based on her own words and what she has shared on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, that she has a problem when it comes to men, when it comes to relationships, and it comes to alcohol. And The Bachelor and all of the Bachelor spinoffs seems to unfortunately be a trifecta of the three. Everyone toted about how this was an amazing opportunity. They were so happy for her. They were so excited for her. But now knowing what we know after the end of this video, the end of this episode by Vice, it's hard for me to be anything but worried for her or other contestants or participants who are on the show, and also those who are working on the show currently. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, you can leave a Christmas tree down in the comments for the temporary Christmas tree in the background. As per usual, I think Vice did a really good job with this documentary. I wish they had just delved a little bit deeper into kind of the scandals and the allegations, but I really did enjoy the buildup and how you kind of learned about everything, the background, the beginning, to where it is now, or at least at the time that this was released. I believe it was 2023. And they explain everything in a way that makes it very digestible. And they also let the producers kind of speak for themselves and add to the narratives that they were trying to say. So they're trying to say, yeah, production didn't really care about the women. And then they're showing 2 former producers and a casting director not caring about the women, really. Again, the only person who seems to show any sort of remorse was Michael. And he was the one who extensively talked about his own participation and also talked about how the show led him to essentially become an alcoholic, which is crazy to think about. But yes, Vice knocked this out of the park. I love this series, and I think Vice did great work on it. But I thank you all so much for being here. If you liked the video, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you are aware of every single time that I upload. If there's another show, series, episode you'd like me to cover, you can drop it down in the comments, or you can leave me a DM here on Instagram. I can't wait to hear your thoughts, your feelings, and your opinions down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.